The big question is, how did they get here? How does a fitness unicorn, one that seemed to be crushing it after the pandemic, end up in such a tough spot? All right, picture this. It's March 28th, 2025. We're inside a boardroom in Bengaluru, and the tension is so thick you could cut it with a dumbbell. A massive, company-defining decision is about to be made. Because the leadership team at Cult.fit, India's biggest fitness chain, is staring down a billion-dollar question. And it's a question that puts their entire business model on the line. Is the dream of being the Netflix of fitness over? And this is why they're sweating. On one hand, you see they pulled in over 1,000 crore in income last year. That's huge. But then you look to the right, a net loss of 871 crore. They are burning through cash at an absolutely terrifying rate. That's the core of the problem, right there. So the big question is, how did they get here? How does a fitness unicorn, one that seemed to be crushing it after the pandemic, end up in such a tough spot? To really get it, we need to rewind the tape a little bit. Man, what a roller coaster their journey has been. They started back in 2016 with this grand vision: fitness, food, mental wellness, the whole shebang. Then bam, COVID almost wipes them out, forcing this massive pivot to online classes and huge layoffs. But then they come roaring back in 21, acquiring companies, raising a ton of cash from giants like Tata and Zomato, and boom, they're a unicorn. They go all in on a franchise model to grow like crazy, and they do. But you see that last point? That's the kicker. All that scale and profitability is still nowhere in sight. And this quote from co-founder Mukesh Bansal really says it all. This was never supposed to be just a chain of gyms. The ambition from day one was to build an entire ecosystem around your health. It's a beautiful idea, but a really, really hard one to make profitable. Okay, so that brings us right back to that boardroom. With impatient IPO bankers watching their every move, the team has to choose a path forward. And they've basically boiled it down to 4 distinct options, each with its own incredible promise and its own serious risks. First up, Path A, offline first. This is basically them deciding to double down on what made them famous in the first place: their actual physical brick-and-mortar gyms. The game plan here is pretty straightforward. Go hard on franchising. Open more Gold's Gym and Pro Centers, just packing them into the big cities. The goal is to get people in the door and then upsell them to the more expensive Pro and Elite passes. The whole idea is that their famous group classes will create so much buzz that they can cut down on how much they spend on advertising to get each new member. So, what's the good and the bad? Well, the upside is obvious. This is their bread and butter. Their brand is strong and people really love that community feeling. But the risk? It's huge. You're talking about rising rents, having to pay staff more, and this really scary thought that maybe, just maybe, they've already hit a ceiling on demand in the big cities. That's a tough, tough gamble. All right, what's behind door number 2? Path B is basically the polar opposite. Let's call it the digital margin core. This is all about shifting focus to the high-tech, scalable world of digital fitness. Here, the idea is for them to stop being a gym company that has an app and start being a software company that just happens to have a few really nice gyms. Those gyms would basically just be giant billboards for the brand. All the real marketing muscle would go into pushing their at-home subscription and, more importantly, that premium AI coaching service. And here you see that classic digital dilemma, right? The dream is those massive, scalable profit margins you just can't get with physical locations. But the nightmare? The cost to acquire a customer online is going through the roof, and you're in a knife fight with giants like Apple, who can copy your best features in a heartbeat. It is a very high-stakes game. Whoa. Okay, now this chart right here is where things get really wild. This is the LTV to CAC ratio, basically how much money a customer brings in versus what it costs to get them. For the basic Cult Pass Home, it's 1.5x. They're barely making their money back. But look at Transform, their AI coaching service, 30x, 30. They make 30 times their money back on those customers. If you're sitting in that boardroom, that number is practically screaming at you. So what's Path C? Well, this is the why not both option. This is the hybrid bundle. It's all about weaving everything together instead of choosing one thing. With this strategy, the focus isn't on getting more customers. It's on getting more money from each customer you already have. You bundle everything: MindFit, that super profitable Transform coaching, the gym passes, You try to sell them Cult Sport apparel, maybe even bring back a food offering through a partnership. You just want to make every single person's shopping cart bigger. The upside makes perfect sense. You get a higher lifetime value per customer. But the risk? Well, you risk trying to juggle way too many balls at once. The sheer complexity of managing all of that could be a killer. You might get so distracted trying to build the perfect bundle that you forget to fix the actual problems in your core business. And that brings us to the final option, Path D. This one is a classic business strategy, the geographic hedge. In other words, don't put all your eggs in one metro city basket. This is kind of like a two-pronged attack. On one side, you go into smaller Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities with a cheaper, lighter gym model to find new growth. At the exact same time, you go even more premium in the big cities with your elite offerings. And all the while, you're trying to sign more corporate wellness deals to get that stable, predictable revenue stream. The best part of this is you're diversifying your income. You're not just relying on affluent people in Bangalore and Mumbai anymore. But the danger? Spreading yourself way, way too thin. It's like trying to fight a war on 3 different fronts. You risk doing a mediocre job everywhere instead of a great job in one place. So, there you have it. 4 very different paths forward. And back in that boardroom, the time for just talking about this stuff is over. The pressure is on. Look at that, 12 to 18 months. That is the entire window they have to prove to their investors and to the world that they have a real, working, profitable business model before they attempt an IPO. The clock is absolutely ticking. And it's not some abstract deadline. You've got bankers breathing down their necks, demanding to see a clear path to profit. You've got franchise partners who need to know the game plan by next month. And, oh yeah, the busiest time of the year for new gym signups, summer, is literally weeks away. They have to decide right now where to put their limited budget. So it all comes down to this single decision. Are they a franchise company, a digital company, some kind of hybrid? This choice is going to define everything. It's the difference between becoming a cautionary tale of a startup that burned too bright and pulling off a legendary comeback. So if you were in that room, which path would you choose?